Evan Neal, Kayvon Thibodeaux, Deonte Banks. Those names matter now. First, a future safety fit is showing up. Then Malik Nabers' knee concern changes the offensive depth conversation. And then, the one that changes everything. The real cost of moving on from former high picks. By the end, you'll know which Giants roster decisions are about winning and which ones are about pride. Big Blue lock-in. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Drafting a player high does not guarantee he stays. Not under John Harbaugh. Not in this version of the Giants. Not when Jaxson is the starting quarterback, Malik Nabers is the centerpiece, and every roster spot has to serve a real purpose. Real talk before we dive in. Eagles fans, Cowboys fans, and Commanders fans love when Big Blue gets sentimental. They want the Giants holding on to mistakes forever. If you want this channel, by Big Blue and for Big Blue, to be louder than every rival fan base, hit subscribe right now. Every sub is a flag planted at MetLife Stadium. Comment, "Let's go Giants," and let them see it. Now let's start with the story most people will overlook. Because the future of this roster is not just about who gets cut. It is about who replaces them. Here is the first layer. The Giants are already being connected to future draft solutions, and one name matters in this conversation, Dillon Thieneman. Not because he is on the roster right now. He is not. Not because the Giants have made a final decision. They have not. He matters because the scouting conversation around him tells you what Big Blue is studying while evaluating the current roster. The Giants are looking at roster building through future needs, not nostalgia. That is the key. When a team studies a safety profile like Thieneman, the question becomes bigger than one prospect. It becomes, what kind of back-end defender does this defense need next? And the answer is simple. They need players who fit the long-term plan, not players who survive because of old draft status. A safety like Thieneman matters because the Giants have to think beyond the current depth chart. Future safety needs do not wait until the room is empty. Good front offices identify the next wave before the hole becomes obvious. That is what separates real roster construction from patchwork. Film don't lie. This is not just about adding a name to a future draft board. This is about the Giants admitting that the secondary has to keep evolving. If the current group does not give John Harbaugh the reliability, range, and defensive flexibility he wants, the front office has to be ready with answers. And Thieneman fits the type of future answer fans should track. He represents coverage awareness. He represents back-end discipline. He represents a safety who can be evaluated as part of a larger defensive plan, not just as a shiny draft object. For a Giants team that has to deal with the Eagles, Cowboys, and Commanders every season, safety play is not decoration. It is survival. Personal opinion here. I think Dillon Thieneman is exactly the kind of future name Giants fans should care about more than a nostalgia rumor. Not because he is guaranteed to be the pick, but because he points to the kind of roster John Harbaugh is trying to build. Disagree? Drop your reasoning below. And that brings us to the second story. Because future planning is one thing. Protecting your current offensive centerpiece is something else entirely. Now, what most channels miss is this. Malik Nabers' knee concern is not just a Malik Nabers story. It is a roster math story. It is an offensive depth story. It is a Jaxson story. Nabers is the kind of player who changes how defenses line up. When he is right, the offense has a clear identity. Dart has a true focal point. The Giants have a player who forces attention and creates space for everyone else. But when there is a knee concern around that kind of player, the front office cannot shrug and say, "We'll figure it out." That is not a plan. That is hope. The practical impact is clear. The Giants have to examine the wide receiver room, the offensive depth, and the emergency options behind Nabers. They have to ask who can handle a larger role if the plan has to adjust. They have to ask whether the offense is too dependent on one player's availability. That does not mean panic. It means preparation. And this is where the OBJ nostalgia angle matters. The Giants can enjoy the memory of Odell Beckham Jr. without building a roster around the past. Nostalgia feels good. Depth wins games. If the front office is choosing between a sentimental storyline and a practical solution for Dart, the practical solution has to win every time. The truth nobody's telling you. Malik Nabers' knee concern makes every offensive roster decision sharper. It affects wide receiver depth. It affects game planning. It affects how much pressure lands on Jaxson. That is the difference between watching any channel and watching this one. I'll say it, and I know some of Big Blue Nation will push back. In my opinion, the Giants should overprotect Malik Nabers, even if that means being ruthless with another roster spot. He is too important to Dart's development. He is too central to the offense. Tell me I'm wrong. Now I want your answer. Comment, protect, if the Giants should build extra depth around Nabers no matter what. Comment, push, if you think they should trust the current plan and stop overthinking it. No middle ground. Quick reminder, if you are still here, you are Big Blue. Hit subscribe, because the biggest part is next. Because now we get to the coldest question on the whole roster. Not who fans like. Who actually helps the Giants win? Now, what you have really been waiting for. This is the uncomfortable part of roster building. Drafting a player high does not guarantee he stays. The front office eventually has to ask a brutal question. Are we keeping this player because he helps us win, or because we do not want to admit the pick did not work out? And that question applies to real names. Evan Neal, Kayvon Thibodeaux, Deonte Banks. Different players, different situations, different levels of pressure, but all connected by the same theme. Former high picks do not get permanent protection. This is where the Giants' roster math gets serious. The Sports Illustrated mailbag raised the key issue. What does it actually cost the Giants to cut, trade, or move on from former high draft picks? That cost is not just one thing. It is sunk cost. It is dead money. It is cap savings. It is positional depth. It is locker room perception. But here is the part that matters most. Those factors do not all point in the same direction. A player can be expensive to move on from, but still not fit the future. A player can create savings, but leave the depth chart exposed. A player can have draft pedigree, but lose the trust battle inside the building. That is why these decisions are hard. Take Evan Neal. His name comes up because offensive line decisions always carry extra weight when Jaxson is the starting quarterback. If a former high pick is not giving the Giants the level of play they need, the team has to decide whether patience is still development or whether patience has turned into denial. That is the line. Kayvon Thibodeaux is a different type of conversation. Edge talent is valuable, and former high picks at premium positions always get more runway. But even there, the Giants cannot build by reputation alone. If the long-term direction changes, the front office has to measure production, role, cost, and fit. Then there is Deonte Banks. Corner decisions can flip a defense. If the Giants do not believe a former high pick fits the coverage plan, the old draft slot cannot be the deciding argument. John Harbaugh's team has to prioritize what works inside the current defensive identity. Now connect this to Dillon Thieneman and Malik Nabers. Thieneman shows you the front office is thinking ahead about future defensive solutions. Nabers' knee concern shows you offensive depth has to be protected now. And the former high pick debate shows you where the roster spots have to come from. That is the triangle. Future needs, current health, former investments. The Giants are not just picking players. They are choosing a philosophy. Are they going to be a team that protects draft mistakes because the old grade looked good? Or are they going to be a team that admits the league moves fast and roster spots belong to players who fit the next version of Big Blue? I am going on record right now. In my opinion, John Harbaugh should be ruthless with former high picks if the fit is no longer there. Not emotional, not reckless, ruthless. The Giants are building around Jaxson and Malik Nabers, and the roster has to serve that mission. Tell me I'm wrong. Hold me to this. Now you have your answer to the question I asked earlier. Drop, protect, or push in the comments, and tell me which former high pick you are watching closest, Neal, Thibodeaux, or Banks. If this analysis hit, like the video. That is how we keep the algorithm pushing real Big Blue breakdowns instead of lazy rival noise. 3 stories. 1 picture. Here is what it all means together. The Giants are entering a phase where the roster is not judged by draft slot, name value, or nostalgia. It is judged by fit. It is judged by usefulness. It is judged by whether a player helps Jaxson, protects Malik Nabers, and gives John Harbaugh the kind of team that can survive the NFC East. That is the new standard. The Eagles are not waiting for the Giants to figure it out. The Cowboys are not giving Big Blue extra patience. The Commanders are not going to care where a player was drafted. Rival teams attack weak spots. Smart teams remove them before they become targets. That is why this roster math matters. Not because fans want cuts, because fans want wins. And if Big Blue wants to be New York tough again, the front office has to separate investment from attachment. A former high pick can still be part of the future, but he has to earn that future inside the current plan. Listen closely. The next video is going deeper into the exact roster pressure points around Malik Nabers, Jaxson, and the former high picks under the microscope. If you are Big Blue for real, subscribe now and hit the bell, because YouTube will not always bring the next breakdown back to you unless you tell it to. Drop your final answer below. Protect or push. And name the player you think is under the most pressure. Neal, Thibodeaux, Banks. Pick one. Because one decision is still hanging over this roster. The front office has to decide how much patience is still smart and how much patience becomes a trap. That answer is going to define the next version of the Giants. Big Blue Nation, this is where teams grow up. No more living off draft night. No more protecting old mistakes. No more letting Eagles, Cowboys, and Commanders fans laugh at soft roster decisions. Subscribe, stay locked, and let's go Giants. Big Blue rides together.